Well, it's important to acknowledge the container that we can have together, that we can form. And in doing that, acknowledging the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha in this traditional way creates containment that connects to all of those in the past. And it's also just fine to think of them in whatever way feels best for you, of acknowledging the enlightened ones that have gone before us, the teachings, and the Sangha, the group of each other, as well as all of the monks and nuns that have gone before us. So I will be official and say, welcome. It's the first and third Sunday in Sight and Metta. It's wonderful to see you. And I'm going to start by ringing my miniature. Check it out, Sandra. Remember the last time I had to do this with wine glasses? Check out this bell. I'm in a hotel room, so here we go. Oh, I wonder if do I have original sound turned on? Or did it just stop? I do, oh good, thanks Doug. Okay, it's hard to hold. And so we take this time to pay homage and do the refuges. We won't do the precepts. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranam gacchami, Dhanang saranam gacchami, Sanghang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhanang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Buddhang saranam gacchami, Tatyampi Dhanang saranam gacchami, Tatyampi Sanghang saranam gacchami. And so we take this time to let ourselves settle into our noble position, our noble seat. For now, we have the formal practice of setting aside everything that was busy and got us here. So much that's been going on in our lives in the last couple weeks since we saw each other. And let's just take a moment to clear the dense forest in our lives and come home to feeling aliveness in our bodies. And we can do that by just being in the present moment as best we can, noticing what is present right now. And so we may start by noticing if there's tension in the body. I always notice it in my face as soon as I sit down. Feeling gravity as we sit. I'm not sitting in my usual place. I'm sitting on a pillow, on a chair, at a little round dining kind of game table in a hotel room, motel room. It feels different. We have external circumstances and we have internal circumstances. We have this place to settle, which goes with us wherever we go. And we can just notice where there may be tensions behind the eyes or in the jaw. And letting a little soft feeling, kind of soothing energy if we can, relax and flow through us, coming perhaps through our neck and shoulders, letting our shoulders relax. Letting sounds arrive at the ears, close-up sounds and faraway sounds. Just noticing the cessation of sound. And we come into our senses. Letting that relaxation flow on through our neck and shoulders and down our backs. Letting our shoulders relax and noticing touching of the hands where they're resting, the arms where they lay. We can notice our buttocks on the cushion. Gravity. We can settle into this, having our internal landscape be known. One of the quotes from the Buddha has to do with enjoying good health and bringing true happiness to our families, to bring peace to other beings. In order to do that, we first need to discipline and control our own minds. And if one can control the mind, we can find our way to freedom. And wisdom and virtue will naturally come along. And so we take a few moments together, settling within our own skin, letting gravity hold the container of our breath. As we begin to notice letting go happening, releasing and relinquishing what we might be grasping onto. We may notice tensions in our body, and we can just remind ourselves with just a soft note to relax. Relax tensions in the face. Relax effort of holding ourselves up and just allowing our bones to hold us without efforting. There's freedom in acknowledging each moment. There can be a relaxation and an opening to being with something just the way it is. This is the way it is right now. Without any additional judgment or complaining or praising, or as best we can, we just are with what's happening. If we choose to focus on the breath, we can notice the beginning, the middle, and the end of the breath at the nostrils or the pressure against the belly. Or the release at the belly when the breath goes out. Or the warmth and the coolness at the nostrils. That helps the busy mind become more concentrated. Without a push toward concentration, it's just the ability to let the hindrances be known and seen, but not grasped onto. And we can notice any number of these at any time arising. Of sleepiness, sloth, and torpor. We can notice it and open our eyes, let light in, and just be with what's happening in the heart and in the mind as we hold ourselves gently. There may be anxiousness in the mind, worries, trepidations. That too can be seen clearly. We have mindfulness at the fore. Mindfulness greets whatever is arising. And mindfulness can have a balance to it. We can let equanimity be a part of this balance. And we can have wisdom, the wisdom of awareness, being with what arises, noticing that it's temporary. We may have some thoughts or feelings or sensations in the body arise, and moments later, we might be aware of something else. And so we don't cling or grasp onto what arises. Could be something pleasant. I like the way I'm sitting in my seat right now. I'm glad I'm not thinking about X, Y, and Z. We can go off on thinking jags. And then we can just wake up right there in that moment. Whatever's happening, we drift, we come back. We have just the right amount of effort to have interest in seeing the nature of things, that they are impermanent, arise, and pass away, and we are seeing this clearly for ourselves, moment to moment. We may have doubt in the practice. That's okay. Sometimes there's healthy doubt. It creates investigation. We often have grasping at something or pushing something away. The tiredness, the sleepiness, the anxiety, those 5 hindrances, they are part of the human territory. But we have the understanding and ability to see these hindrances as they arise and pass away. We can notice beginning, middle, and end. And then we can settle back on our breath or back into our whole body as the anchor, the container of our breath. Being content with what arises, seeing it clearly, noticing if we're having a feeling tone about it, that we think it's pleasant or that we think it's unpleasant or we can't tell. But we hold ourselves gently, openly, in awareness. Reminding ourselves as the mind wanders, just to return to the present moment without judgment or blaming ourselves for anything. Just wake up where we are and begin again. Notice, is this pleasant or unpleasant? Maybe I can't tell. Neutral. Sometimes summoning effort, enlivening the mind, gladdening the mind. One of the ways in gladdening the mind is to remember our good deeds. To hold ourselves gently and remember a good deed. We may want to notice if our breath is a long breath or a short breath on the inhale or the exhale. Inclining. We might ask ourselves, what is the attitude of the mind right now? And sometimes just acknowledging, noticing what the attitude of the mind is can soften it if there's tension, or maybe there's fogginess and unclarity. Whatever it is, we just notice what's the attitude of the mind. Letting the body stay settled, the container of the breath, feeling gravity of the buttocks on the cushion and the feet on the floor, or wherever you notice them. Knowing that with mindfulness and awareness, we can meet with our full attention whatever arises. Whatever comes into our hearts and our minds. Acknowledging that this is the way it is right now. Just this. There can be a calmness. There can be a happiness. Arising and noticing that we are present, and at each moment that we notice that is a moment of freedom. And that's our own taking refuge in the Buddha, that we find our way to this awakening moment by moment. We have this honoring, internally bowing to this nature of awareness that is already within us. Awareness is present. So we acknowledge our ability to awaken to freedom from grasping and clinging by letting go each moment that we can. Sometimes we may feel an urge for movement, and we can just notice as we start to shift or change a position that there's intention that happens. We have intention before the movement, and becoming aware of intention takes us a layer deeper into the practice. Intention before movement, intention before speaking, intention before reaching towards something. We can notice that that desire happens from craving, from a certain need. We have a desire, and then we have the action. And so we see that level below level below level of our thinking process and our action process. All of that happening just here, anchoring in the body. Allowing ourselves to be open to what arises in the present moment. Seeing it clearly with mindfulness and awareness and letting it go. Noticing when it leaves on its own. reminding ourselves if the mind has wandered, to just come back to the present moment. What is happening right now? We can ask ourselves. Is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Do we have an opinion about it? Are we neutral? No judgment. As little commentary as possible. Just noticing thinking arising. Letting that soft, gentle note go to various places if we're wandering. Waking up right where we are. And that brings joy and gladdening to the heart and to the mind because we're aware in the present moment. We're holding ourselves gently, kindly, with whatever is arising. Arising and passing away. Holding ourselves with ease. Letting this kindness be cultivated. Sometimes if we think about something that really makes us happy, brings us some lightness of being. It may be a place you like to go to, a place in your mind, a place in nature. Could be an animal or a child. Or just allow this feeling of lightness, openness, well-being. Letting it be known by us. Inclining our hearts and minds toward well-being. Wishing ourselves to be free from harm, safe and protected, and have ease in our lives. Whatever phrase or feeling is one that works for you. It could just be the word metta, the Pali word for kindness, well-being, wishing well-being for ourselves. As the Buddha said in his discourses that he looked far and wide and could find no one more deserving than ourselves for this metta, for this well-being. And we cultivate this well-being for ourselves. To let our hearts stay open, to encourage our hearts to open. And sometimes it's hard to do it for ourselves. And if it happens to be a time when it's hard to do it for yourself, it's easy to move on to a close friend. Holding this close friend in your heart, in your being. Seeing this close friend happy and healthy. Wishing them to be free from harm, safe and protected, have ease in their lives. May they take care of themselves happily. letting this feeling of kindness fill our hearts, flow through ourselves, and include a close friend. Wishing that friend to be happy and healthy and have ease in their lives. And letting this kindness, this feeling of gratitude, this feeling of well-wishing, flow to a teacher, a benefactor, someone from whom we've derived great benefit. I like to first think of my first Dhamma teacher, or it could be some teacher you liked in school, or it could be a child or an animal. Letting this feeling of well-being and gratitude and open-heartedness be nurtured within us. We hold this teacher in our hearts and minds, that they may be free from harm and have ease in their lives. And then allowing this feeling of kindness that we nurture, cultivate, inclining our hearts and minds toward a neutral person. Someone you have seen, you may not have an opinion about. Just a person you saw recently crossing the street, or maybe you saw them on a device or on television, or maybe it's someone in our circle here that you don't know. Letting this kindness and compassion flow to a neutral being. Or we can also use this sometimes for a category of beings, a larger number of neutral beings. Especially during these times of so much turmoil in the world and so many places. May our hearts perhaps flow to a group of people who may be oppressed or fighting for freedom, or those who may be ill and fighting for their lives. Or keep it simple with just one person. Letting this kindness and well-being, this open-heartedness, be nurtured in our hearts to include others. And we can bring along our kindness for ourselves, for our friend, and for our benefactor. We can bring this along with the neutral person. May you be free from harm, safe and protected. May your mind be relaxed. May you be peaceful and tranquil. Have ease in your life. May our bodies feel at ease, natural and comfortable as we're encompassing these beings in our hearts. Just as I wish to be happy, I know that you also wish to be happy. May these beings that we hold in our hearts be free from harm, safe and protected. Have ease. And may that kindness flow to others in our neighborhoods, with our family and friends, whether we agree with them or not. Everyone wishes to be happy and have freedom, be free from harm and safe and protected. May this kindness flow in other directions. Maybe there's a difficult person, just allowing the kindness that has arisen to touch that person or that situation. Wishing this ease, wishing them to have ease. And so we can nurture this kindness. Sometimes it's difficult around a difficult person or a difficult situation. We can just touch it. We don't have to dive into it. Just offer well-being. May there be freedom from suffering. May all those beings that are known and unknown, seen and unseen, may all beings everywhere have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have ease. May they hold themselves with compassion. Anicca vata sankhara uparevaya domino upakitawa merchanti te sam vipasamo sukho. All conditioned things are subject to impermanence, arise and pass away. Seeing this clearly brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. And I think before we move into some conversation, if we stay in this mindset for a few minutes as you reach for your glass of water, listen to your dog panting beside you, reach for your glasses, doing it all mindfully. I thought I would talk just a little bit about the refuges and precepts, and I might do one each time. So, I mean, generally, the first step sometimes in practice, if you're on your own or if you're doing a longer sit or a weekend sit, the first, or just at home, the first step in the practice is taking refuge in the Buddha. And, sometimes I do it in different orders, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. I think of it sometimes in reverse because we have the support of each other in our Sangha, of those who are with us and those who have come before us for so many generations. And we have the Dhamma, the teachings, which is what brings us together. And we have the enlightened ones that have gone before us, the Gautama Buddha and others. But often it's taught as Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And so taking refuge in the Buddha can be approached on a variety of levels, and we can choose the way that's most meaningful for our particular temperament. We might, for instance, take refuge in the historical Buddha, the human being that attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree 2,600 years ago. That doesn't mean that we're going to worship the man who, became enlightened, or that we're setting him up as another or as higher than ourselves. But bowing and honoring the Buddha nature that already exists within us. For example, when the Buddha encountered Mara, when his mind was really on fire and a lot was going on and he was under that tree for as many days as he was, he felt fear. The same painful, constricted throat, chest, and the tightness in the belly, and the same racing heart that each of us experiences when fear strikes. When it hits our heart and we're grasping. And by willingly meeting fear with his full attention, being present in the moment, the Buddha discovered fearlessness, the open, clear awareness that recognizes the arising and passing away of fear without contracting or identifying with it. And taking refuge in the truth of his awakening, just taking refuge in the truth of that awakening as a possibility, can inspire us on our own path toward a kind of fearlessness. In the most fundamental way, taking refuge in the Buddha means taking refuge in our own potential liberation. In order to embark on a spiritual path, we have to have a kind of faith, a confidence in our own heart and mind that we have the potential to have freedom, to awaken, just in each moment. And the true power of the Buddha's story, the power that's kept it alive for all these centuries, rests in the fact that it demonstrates what's possible for each of us. And so when I think about this kind of fearlessness or taking refuge in the Buddha this way, this came up for me today because I'm staying in this hotel room where there's been a lot of noise in the room next door. And it's one of those rooms that has a door in between. And so the walls are okay, but the door is a hollow core door. And it's a family room beside me. So there's a husband and wife and their two kids. And there's a lot of jumping up and down on the bed and playing and yelling and screaming, and even at 11:30 and 12 o'clock at night when I have been wanting to be in bed. The first night, I used it as practice, like, noticing aversion, noticing judgment, noticing my own discomfort. I kind of figured, well, how long am I going to do this? So, an hour or two goes by and it's 1 or 1:30 in the morning, and I go, okay, now I'm going to, put in my earbuds and play my sleep music and, you know, incline the mind towards something more wholesome than, well, I wanted to go to sleep. So then this little interaction occurred where Bill, my partner, got upset enough by yesterday, the third night, that he went down to talk to the desk. And I had already asked the desk the first night how long the people beside us were staying. And he said, well, they're going to be here for a few more days, for a little while. And he said we could call to, ask them to be quieter. Well, I let that go. So then another night went by. And then last night, Bill went down to the desk and said, there are these kids jumping around. We can't sleep. Could you call them? So, and I didn't know he went down to do that. So a few minutes later, I'm getting into bed and I hear the guy next door through the door saying a lot of swear words about, who do they think they are? I can let my kids play here. My kids can play if they want to. And, why don't they fucking come over here and knock on my door and say it to me in person? And, things like that. And it was interesting because I might have handled it a little differently had I been the one going down to the desk, but I was not. So I had to choose how to hold the situation. And, you notice when somebody's angry around you, all the things that happen in your body, the excitedness, the tightness, a whole variety of emotions just flood in. And Bill was uncomfortable still with that kind of energy. Like he said, oh, I can't go to sleep now with that kind of energy. And I said, we kind of reframed it and it quieted down. And but in looking at being fearless, and in looking at how limiting sometimes our stories are, and I just decided that the way that I would have handled it might have been to go knock on his door. But I didn't want to do it last night because, to him, I'm going to be this old gray-haired lady in a nightgown. So I think having the desk handle it was the way to do it. However, anyway, I decided this morning to go knock on his door when we were on our way out to Bill's sister's. And very nervously, he came out into the hall, and I said I wanted to introduce myself and that I was the woman next door, and I was sorry for what had happened last night, and that I wanted to tell him a little bit of the situation. So I told him that we had come here because a sibling had died and we were planning things, and then we were having the memorial, and it just kind of happened that last night by 11:30, we really needed to rest. And I was sorry if the phone call had to come from the desk, and that I hoped that I didn't cause him too much distress. And in the process, I told him my name and he told me his, and I found out that he's been here for a week and he and his family are going to be here for another week. They're waiting for an apartment to open up, so they're living here until an apartment somewhere across town opens up for him. And, he said, well, it's the weekend. I like to have my kids play, and sometimes I let them play longer. And but tomorrow they have to go to school, and I have to drive them across town to school, so it won't be the same. And when I first started talking, I had this nervousness in my voice, but I had a kind of courage because I felt that I was taking refuge in kindness. and taking refuge in being open to a situation that I didn't know how it was going to go. And in the end, we smiled, we shook hands. Now I know Thomas and he knows me, and I have kindness to send to him as a neutral person, for him and his family, that they can get settled and he can get his kids back in school. And so now, when I came back, not a sound, nothing going on over there. Now maybe they went off to, somebody's mother or cousin or something for the day, but I myself feel a lot better about it. And so, this kind of limiting story that I had about myself, and for a while there, I kind of forgot my nature of being, or my Buddha nature of being aware and loving while I dealt with, these various emotions that arise that cause me to be distracted. And so in taking refuge in the Buddha, we're taking refuge in the same capacity of awareness that awakened Siddhartha under the Bodhi tree. And we too can realize the blessing of freedom, and that we can become fearless. I felt much freer after speaking with him, than the amount of tension that I felt in my body and in my mind before speaking with him. And some people have a more, there are those who are more devoted by nature. And so sometimes there's a way of seeking safety and refuge in something that seems more like the living spirit of the Buddha's awakened heart and mind. And, some people who are more leaning toward like praying to Christ or to the Divine Mother. We can take refuge in a being or a presence that cares about our suffering. So it's the Buddha gave his teachings to all kinds of people, and he knew that they had various temperaments. And so even though there's this sort of formula of the Buddha, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, even though there's this kind of formula, it's not an empty or mechanical ritual, but it's a practice that's meant to expand our understanding and our intention. So after taking refuge in the Buddha, in our own awakening, or in the idea of the beloved, we can turn our attention inward and take refuge in this awakening heart and mind, and letting go of a notion that the Buddha nature is something outside of ourselves or outside of our own awareness. And we can look toward the innate wakefulness of our own beings, the tender openness of our hearts. So it was interesting in that situation with talking to Thomas next door. Minutes earlier, I was taking myself to be in this rush of emotion and thoughts moving through my mind, and with the intention of taking refuge in awareness. I just chose to go forward. I could have walked by and not knocked on his door. We're only staying one more night and it doesn't matter. But I wanted to feel clearer about it, and I wanted awareness to be present. And the small identity of me dissolved enough, and with it, that the fear, the kind of tracing of fear that was there, lessened in my body and lessened in my heart. So by directing our attention towards our deepest nature, by honoring the essence of our being, our own Buddha nature, it can become more of a living reality. And we can take refuge in the truth of who we are. And we do that in those moment-to-moment awarenesses of noticing what's happening. So I think that's my reflections on taking refuge in the Buddha, taking refuge in our own awareness. And I'm going to ring the bell and let the thoughts settle down. Ooh, that was poignant. Just take a few moments and you might reflect on ways that you can find of acknowledging your own nature of awakening and letting our own essence be a more vivid reality for the truth of who we are. Thank you for listening to the Dharma. I'll make a couple of announcements about PIMC because there are a few things. I guess the main one is that the building is getting completed. That's really exciting. And there are classes on the website of portlandinsight.org. And I sent out an email, I hope you all got it, that I'm going to do a day long from 9 to 2 on December 4th. So I hope you'll mark your calendars and consider sitting from 9 to 2. I think we could have a great time together. I always love sitting with you.